So we ran out of camera, and I don't know when.
Still one of maybe a long time ago.
Yeah. But I wanted to talk about this guy that we heard. He was some sports person. I didn't catch who he was.
Sporty kind of. Oh, that was awful.
Mm-hmm. On the CBC, he was interviewed.
I think he's a music kind of guy. But
oh, really? I thought it was
something
sports.
cruise. Well, he was into sports.
Oh.
I think he's a music performer. He was on Tom Power, Q.
Oh,
CBC.
yeah, James likes that.
I like it okay, but geez, he's been doing the race media thing way too much.
Well, everyone is. So,
on CBC, yeah.
Yeah. Well, lots of. I mean, she did it in her book.
Yep.
So, he was talking about how
the guest, not Tom Power.
No, yeah, the guest. He was talking about how it's society that encourages people to, if they have one car and they would be fine with one car, but then they see somebody else has two cars, well, they want two cars. And so it's always like a competition thing, and it's like, no, it's not. It is
not.
for.
Like, you've never heard me say, "Gosh darn it, our neighbors have several cars."
No.
And let's get another one.
And it's really old, but
for the longest time, we never had a car at all. And I can't recall.
No, he's only had one car.
We'd rent a car.
Mm-hmm.
And the first one I got when I was age 56.
Yeah.
So I can't recall saying, like we'd rent a car every so occasionally when we wanted to go cross country. Mm-hmm. That might be 3 times a year.
And we used to rent it. We did get so much use out of the car when we rented it, because we'd go to the mountains, we'd go, lots of. Anyway.
Yeah. Visit
do the recycling.
Relatives up 10 hours away, 11 hours away.
Mm-hmm. But so that worked out great then. But then eventually it worked out. James got a car just in time, because it was just as he was coming down with the cancer. So
it was within maybe half a year of getting the car.
Because then we were traveling to Edmonton and stuff. And anyway.
Cross country for checkups, treatments, so on and so forth.
And he couldn't walk anywhere for
a while. For about half a year I was on a walker.
Even in town he had to. It was hard just to get him to the car and out of the car. But anyway.
It was interesting. It's almost.
It's hard to.
Forgotten.
Yeah, I know. But the guy on the radio, so the guest on Tom Power yesterday, he was
Todd Cruz, Dave Cruz, something like that. A music.
I don't know. I don't know who he is.
Sorry.
I have no idea what he looks like.
And he was yibbering and yabbering about wanting what your neighbors had.
Yeah, and how he'd get upset, if he was made to feel weaker, or like he
inferior
was inferior, then he'd get really mad and he'd go punch people in the face. Then he was talking about society doing that too, and it's like the whole time he's talking about, you see this, you see that, you da right? And so he wasn't taking responsibility for his actions.
No.
It's not society that punched people in the face. He did it.
It makes you mad.
Because he's aggressive. Because he's aggressive and he wants to dominate. He thinks that it's his right to dominate. And if he's not able to dominate, then he's going to punch you in the face. Yeah. And we're supposed to feel passive people in our society are supposed to feel what? Like he's
sorry for him.
He has some sort of
right.
An injury or something, he's
a condition, a medical condition.
because he's aggressive. So we shouldn't make him feel inferior, because he might come over and punch us in the face. Yeah. Like what? That's just ridiculous. And so she'd actually mentioned something in this book that I thought was pretty interesting. She said something, I can't remember where it was in the book, but she talked about how you have to deal with your inner child didn't get the care that they needed when they were children, but now you're an adult. You have to take responsibility for yourself, kind of thing. And when I read that, it made me think about the guy on the radio. At some point, you gotta realize, no, it's not society that's punching people in the face, it's you. You're punching people in the face.
Shameful.
That's ridiculous. And it's got to stop. You can't be aggressive with other people. If you're if you're an aggressive person because you didn't receive the proper parenting when you were young, stay away from other people.
Yeah. Either change
Don't
or
inflict it on them.
Move away from everyone.
It's not your right to be aggressive. And it's not society's fault that you weren't parented properly and turned out aggressive. So, yeah.
Like if you're been raised poor, I can see a person stealing something. But robbing someone, mugging someone, beating someone up, that sort of stuff, you should go to jail for a long time. I make a huge distinction between crimes, committed against property and crimes committed against the person. Even if it might be robbery. I need your runners or whatever. Yeah, no, you don't need someone's runners so badly that you're going to beat them up or even threaten them. Do a little bit of sneakiness if you need. Of course, this guy was saying, "I want what my neighbors have." Yeah, what's that about? I mean, everyone around us here. There's a house on the corner there that was listed when it was put on the market at $750,000, and that was a while back. And it finally went for something, so we were told, for $600,000. I'm not begrudging the folks that moved in there. I'm not begrudging the folks that moved out of there. We live a different kind of way where we were up until the Canadian government decided not to give me my old age security. Independently wealthy. And fairly happy about the whole situation.
So, you want to talk about anything?
Well, I'll just do a preview of a review. So I'll be talking about ZR Rifle, the plot to kill Kennedy and Castro a little bit more. I touched on it earlier. A reasonably good book, but a reasonably bad book as well. And then I was going to do a review of this a little bit prematurely. I've got about 11 pages left to go in this book. Plus I'm going through the vocabulary, and I've got a fair number of pages there. I think it's roughly 20 pages there. But I'll be through this by the end of today. And it's Die Deutsche Novelle. So it's the German, not novel, but short story. And it's got some classic writers from the 20th century. So it's from 1880, relatively modern, to 1933. Well, that's fascinating because it was published, I think, 34. A little bit later, 36. So they are mentioning, what's going to happen in Germany and stuff like that, because it's up till 33. They realized maybe it was apocalypse because that's when Hitler was elected, right? 33. Published in 36, and they're saying we don't know exactly what's going to happen. There are essays in it introducing these various authors and also the various movements in, I guess you could call it, relatively modern German literature. And we don't know what's going to happen with Nazis and all that sort of stuff. Wow, listen to the way they talk. It's going to end up in war. So one of the things I like about it is it's written, a lot of stuff from Germany from around this time is written in a Fractal script, the old-fashioned script. It's a little bit easier to read than the actual written script in Fractal. But there you go, that old-fashioned script. But this was published in maybe in England or something like that. No, I think it's more like the United States. I'll just check and see. Yep, publishers New York, W.W. Norton. Kind of like still academic publishers. This would be for yeah. Even though Steinhauer, I suspect a Mennonite background, University of Manitoba, Canada. There's a large Mennonite community not too very south of Winnipeg. The University of Manitoba is located on the outskirts of Winnipeg, if not within Winnipeg proper, off to the south. Pauline actually lived there for a summer. And, but yeah, it's got Thomas Mann, fairly lengthy short story. Tubayatso, or Bajazzo, I don't know how to pronounce it actually. But it's got several different, who else? Rainer Maria Rilke, however you want to mispronounce his name. And, Franz Kafka. And then a bunch of, I heard of Ricarda Hook. But I never read anything by her. I've read stuff by Kafka. In the original as well as the translation, and stuff by, I've actually translated some poetry from Rilke.
So some of it's in German and some of it's in English.
Okay, so it's German short stories and then introductions. This will explain, for example, Heine and Rilke, like a biography that they wrote. But there are also essays on these various sorts of movements to be found between 1880 and 1933. So they've got naturalism, impressionism, neo-romanticism. There's a lot of that, right? Neoclassicism, activism, expressionism, and new realism. I think they call that die neue Sächlichkeit, or is it Sachlichkeit? Sachlichkeit, neue Sachlichkeit, new realism. I think those are the only 3 people that I've read. 4 people I've read. Arthur Schnitzler. I've actually acted in a play by him. I think it's called Le Ronde. Is that Schnitzler? I believe so. Le Ronde. Anyway, so 4 people. Now, would this be available? I highly doubt it. You're seeing, particularly, there was a text, from way back when. I hadn't thought Norton was doing these kind of texts for so long. Nowadays, you can get a lot of stuff in literature still, but also I think musical scores and things like that for the Norton scores for music. I think they still do them. When I took music appreciation or whatever you call it this week, and literature or whatever, it was you had Norton scores. It was so long ago they had records, a collection of records. It was something like 12 records that you play, so it had Beethoven's and so on. Anyway, I'll be doing a review of this sort of. Well, maybe I'll be doing a review once I finish that review.
So basically, she gives some crystals, stuff like that, some teas to try to help calm you down or focus you or whatever. And
that's not strip tease, it's actual teas.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I shouldn't say tea, it's herbal infusions
there
or whatever,
you go.
Right? But there's really not a lot of magic in here. It's mostly visualize what you want, and then like make a storyboard or something so that you see how you're going to get there, right? Plan out how you're going to get there. So
sounds like a business plan.
Exactly. So she's basically showing you how to focus and really concentrate on how you're going to focus on what you want and why you want it exactly, and you might think, okay, well, or some parts of the book she's talking about who, like, think of a few people that you really admire financially or whatever, and I was just thinking, I don't. You know?
Pauline asked me, and I said, "Well, it's you, Pauline."
Yeah, and it's, oh, great! No wonder we're here. So because we don't really, I guess we don't value wealth exactly, but I do need to have some in order to make some plans that I have a reality. Like I want to have I want to build a project. It's a business where everyone is equal partners within the business.
They're equal say, basically, it's a democracy.
Yes, democracy. It's a business that is a democracy, and we all work towards a common goal. And I mean, if people slack off, well, we won't make as much. We won't do as well. So everyone works hard, and it's just for people that value learning, working hard physically and mentally, and getting things done. So I really want to start this business, but I need some upfront equity in order to do that. So this is what I was thinking of when I grabbed this book, and that this cannot help me in that way. But
well, I mean, there's the things you already knew about,
yeah.
like doing planning boards and things like that.
Sure.
You know, it seems pretty like prosaic magic. You know, I make that distinction. You know, like there's the magic numbers in physics. I've come up with the prosaic numbers. They're just not really that interesting, but they're kind of like truisms.
Yeah. So there's some truisms in here. So if you set your goal, you actually know. Like you look at, okay, well, I admire that person, maybe I should do what they're doing, and then you think, oh, actually I don't like what they're doing, then that's solved your problem right there. Well, maybe you don't want to be like that person after all, or whatever. So there's that, right? And then there's working the steps to get to where you want to be. And I mean, really, that's how you do anything, little steps. You just keep working away, and eventually you get somewhere.
So Polonius is made fun of by Shakespeare in Hamlet, and he's constantly coming up with these little truisms, but he's coming out with them, not coming up with them. So he says, neither a borrower nor a lender be. Now, Shakespeare kind of blew it. He should have said something like, neither be a borrower nor a lender. But he was having trouble with the rhythm, and he screwed it up. Neither a borrower nor a lender be. And, like, just because it's a truism doesn't mean it's less true. Don't be a borrower, and don't be a lender.
I used to think, like, James was reviewing a David Spade book, and he told me something, like, he'd read a lot of the book to me, because he was enjoying it.
A fair amount. Here's a little tidbit here, here's a little tidbit there.
At one point, David Spade had said something about how he enjoys lending money to people. Like, I think he kept a limit on what it was or whatever. Mm-hmm. But he enjoyed doing it because if they were, once he gave them the money, he'd never have to see them again.
You'd never have to see the folks again. Not just the money.
And I used to do that. I used to feel that way.
Oh,
I would put a limit on it. There was one time I did lend a person considerably more, but she'd been my best friend, and
you didn't see her for a while after.
No, I sure didn't. But
as Pauline said, had been my best friend.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But no, whatever.
I
know. I feel I've always felt like she needs somebody to care for her, and so I've kind of
because she doesn't do a very good job with her. So
kind of felt like a mother to her. So
same
anyway,
age. But right, or was she a couple of years older?
She was a little bit older than me, but only a few months. Maybe
there you go.
5,
Not enough
6,
to make a difference.
No. But anyway, she always had some problems that way. But they keep fighting this year.
Yeah, tough times out there.
You guys, I put out enough seed for everyone. Stop it.
Wow, that's a bad fight there.
No,
so
they're really getting after it. 4.
Maybe it's one pair going after. Oh, and there's more people getting involved up there.
Yeah, it's terrible. They're really fighting. There's not an abundance for everybody. There's not. They're fighting. Yeah. So, anyway, where was I going with that?
You were talking about lending money, neither a borrow nor lender be.
And I used to think that way, but now I realize if you lend people money, then you're encouraging them to live beyond their means. And that's what they really need to learn how to do. So when she's talking about know your credit score and stuff like that, I don't think that's a good thing.
No.
You need to learn how to live within your means. That's how you become fabulously wealthy.
Yeah. So I borrowed money only twice. Once was to hawks. Those birds. Hawk. I think you heard the birds squabbling. But I did borrow money to buy my house. My house was closest to lowest on the market. I bought it for a while back, a little over 20 years ago. It would cost me $80,000. And I borrowed, not from a mortgage company or bank or whatever. I borrowed from the people that I bought it from. I just gave them prepaid checks, as I recall, it's $1,000 a month, or whatever it is. The checks were written out and stuff like that, post-dated. And then I borrowed $15,000 from them, but I had that money in the bank. Yes, but you knew the people. I knew them. Yeah. I had that money in the bank, and I wasn't paying interest or anything like that. You see what I'm saying? They didn't charge interest, but it was paid off in
They were from the same church that his parents belonged to.
They were.
Okay.
They came from.
You were telling me that the daughter had dated your brother.
Yeah, for
Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And they were we lived in a Mormon community, and the Mormon kids would steal from their store, and the people were of Chinese extraction. And our parents would have them over for dinner and things like that. We got along really well with them, and so on and so forth. So there was respect there and caring.
But they didn't go to your church.
Oh.
Okay.
They probably go to Chinese Christian church or something like that, but I could be wrong. It could be Confucian or whatever. But we got along well, and with families, and they actually I made a little bit of a financial arrangement for them. In terms of paying the money off, I gave them a little bit one year and a little bit next year. It was, for tax purposes, right? So I helped them out there, and but I had that money, that $15,000 and more in the bank. I just kept the stuff in the bank in case I ran into, I could have lost my job or something like that. And they always say, have a certain amount of cash on hand, at least in bank, in case something like that happens. So really, the only time I've gone into Hawk in my whole life was for $138 for my education. And I thought that was an immense amount of money. $138. So, and that's the way to be. That's an immense amount of money. If you do have to borrow, $138 is an immense amount of money. It's the only way to be. And like you've only borrowed money, really?
I
for the house.
Borrowed my money for the house and for school, for education. I had student loans.
There you go.
But I paid off my student loans the first summer I worked. Made sure I got that paid off really fast, and I paid off my house in 5 years.
Yeah.
I made sure I got it done in 5 years. So I was eating a lot of potatoes and rice. I was doing that.
Well, what I did was, before I saved up my money, I was thinking of buying a house or whatever. I was earning something a little over $20,000 a year, I think. And I was stashing away for a while, like $10,000 a year. Again, into savings money. I don't know how to handle money or anything like that. So on and so forth, in the sense, invest here, invest there. Like if you get involved with investment with stocks, you better actually spend a lot of time checking out the Wall Street Journal, stuff like that, or you're going to lose money. You could really lose money fast. Canada savings bonds. But what I do, and I'm hoping, the burgers, I'd go to 7-Eleven and eat their burger special, which was, I don't know how much protein there was in the burgers. Actually, it was awful. But I get the burgers, and then I just load the stuff up with the various fixings.
Yeah, my ex, I was eating meat for I don't know, about a year when I met him when I was a teenager, and he showed me that. He was like, "Oh, this is the best. You go there and you can load up the vegetables, and whatever." And so he'd done that, and so he introduced me that, and I was like, "This is disgusting. Why would you eat this?"
You save money that way. It was cheap. It was a little over $1, I think, or something like that. You got all the fixings. It's like
I don't think
a meal
that's
on a
good
wheel.
way to live.
Well, it's a way to save. I don't know if he was that good at saving, but I saved a huge whack of cash. I mean, in that 1 year, for example, where I saved $10,000, that was like 1/8 of my house, right?
He used to get Vietnamese submarines from a place called Bam Mi Ti Ti. And
I've had those at Pauline's instigation.
But they've raised their price now. But they had to, because he'd go in there and he'd get a few, because they'd since he would get the veggie sub, because I turned him on to being vegetarian. He'd get the veggie one, and so they'd just charge him $1.25 for a foot-long sub.
Yeah. Well, the veggie stuff really doesn't cost that much, by comparison with, the subs with all sorts of meat going on. But,
I suppose.
It'd still be expensive, at $1.50. That's incredible. Yeah. That wasn't that long ago, 20 years ago.
So, maybe 25.
It'd be more like 25. Yeah. 20 years ago, it'd be 2002.
Yeah, it would have been 25. So anyway, he'd get those, and that was tasty.
You could survive on that. I was young. I really wasn't that foolish, but I was young. I was able to survive on this burgers. I'd make sure that I'd be getting oranges and apples and all that sort of stuff. I'd have an orange a day, an apple a day, a pear a day, and a banana a day.
Yeah, but a bag of lentils and a bag of rice, cheap.